President Donald Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, has been charged with the mishandling of classified information. Mr. Bolton served as the US president's national security advisor in his first term, but became a fierce critic after he was fired. With more, I'm joined by our America's editor, John Lyons. Very good morning to you, John. John Bolton faces 18 charges. What are they and what do they relate to?
Well, Catherine, this is a major story and it fits with the pattern that many people here believe is occurring in America, in that Donald Trump, through his Department of Justice that he now very much controls, and the FBI, which he also very much controls through his appointments, is going through his list of enemies one by one. President Trump and these agencies deny this, but there certainly now appears to be a real pattern here. John Bolton was, as the National Security Advisor, he was the keeper of America's secrets. He had access to all the top intelligence. He was Donald Trump's National Security Advisor in the first Trump term. He's now been charged with 8 counts of transmission of national defence information and 10 counts of unlawful retention of that sort of information. Now, it follows very much, this is about the fourth major person who's being indicted or sacked, who were seen as Trump enemies. The first one, of course, the high-profile former FBI chief James Comey is facing possible jail. He's been indicted. Of all of these people insist on their innocence. Comey's daughter, who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein successfully, one of the top lawyers here in America, was sacked not long ago, just arbitrarily, seen as the daughter of the man who pursued Donald Trump. Then Letitia James is one of the latest people. She's the state attorney general in New York. She's now facing indictment, and so it now really looks like Donald Trump is going through, or his agencies are going through, his list of enemies one by one. And in fact, he has said on social media himself, he has called for the targeting, the charging of a lot of these people quite openly. And so he's making no secret of the fact. And when he was asked his response to John Bolton's indictment, his response was, he's a bad person, a bad guy. That's the way it goes.
So, John, when the FBI was investigating, what were they looking at in particular with respect to these allegations of John Bolton mishandling classified information?
Well, not too long ago, there was a high-profile raid here in Washington, D.C. on John Bolton's office, and they also raided his home outside Washington, D.C. High publicity. There were lots of media there. He did produce a book looking at some of his time as National Security Advisor. The allegations appear to be by the government, by the Department of Justice, that he certainly retained some national security information from his time, and that he transmitted some by email, by open sources. We can see there the FBI when they were raiding his house outside Washington, D.C. And so it looks like the book came out some time ago. He has been a really strong critic of Donald Trump in recent months on CNN and other networks. And certainly a lot of people, his supporters, believe that this was just purely retribution for criticising Donald Trump. The Department of Justice and the FBI says we don't operate like that. We do not have a weaponised agency, and the FBI has credibility and objectivity. Part of the problem here is that the people running these agencies, like Kash Patel running the FBI, Pam Bondi running the Department of Justice, every day almost they're out there saying what a wonderful, brilliant president Donald Trump is. And so clearly they're not even trying to portray themselves as objective.
You outlined there, John, that John Bolton is now the third high-profile person, a high-profile critic as well as President Trump to come into the spotlight here with similar indictments. Can you remind us, though, of what the relationship once was between Bolton and Trump?
Well, in the first term, Donald Trump's first term, he and John Bolton were almost joined at the hip often. They were, because Donald Trump's strong suit is certainly not international affairs, or it certainly wasn't in his first term. He was very much more a domestic president. He's now trying to obviously change that with the Middle East and everything else. But John Bolton was essentially one of the most influential people in the Oval Office, in his circle of advisors. And John Bolton was very much a hardliner. John Bolton was seen as very much a pro-Trump. We will show our strength abroad. We don't want to get involved in a lot of overseas conflicts. And so they were very, very close, as you would expect from National Security Advisor. This is someone who has access to all the CIA, secret intelligence, all the FBI material. They are the most trusted person in a way in the whole system, and very close. Then they fell out. In that first term, Donald Trump sacked and got rid of a lot of people. And John Bolton was one of them who fell out with him. And now the Bolton camp would argue that this is purely retribution. And he, like the others, is facing time in jail.
And finally, John, you speak to those institutions and those who run them, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi and the FBI and the Department of Justice. What is the reaction from Americans locally there to what is announced, these indictments for John Bolton? And how are they viewing these institutions, these public institutions as a result?
Well, Catherine, it sort of very much breaks down according to your, it's such a divided country at the moment. The media is divided. There's the completely pro-Trump media like Fox News. There's the media like CNN who are much more critical of Donald Trump. And the average voter, if they're a MAGA supporter of Trump, then they support this and think this is great and believe the line that all these people have done the wrong thing. Like Donald Trump openly calls James Comey a dirty cop, former head of the FBI. Now, normally that would be defamatory to call any policeman, let alone the former head of the FBI, a dirty cop. Donald Trump does that openly in the Oval Office, and whenever he can. Like today, he says of John Bolton, he's a bad person, a bad guy. Now, in any normal system where rule of law was operating correctly, you would not have a president making a commentary on a case like that. Most presidents in the past would have said that matters now before the courts. I don't say anything. Donald Trump's different. He says that James Comey's a bad cop, a dirty cop. He says that John Bolton's a bad man. So all of this could end up being a problem for Donald Trump if the courts rule that these people can't get an objective trial, because the president has prejudiced the atmosphere. Then in fact it might backfire against Donald Trump.